Welcome to the special event for the launch of Friends of Alice at the library. I am Mark Silberstein and I'll be your MC and interviewer. And I'm here with Isabel del Rio, the founder of Friends of Alice. Tonight's schedule will start with a reading by Isabel from one of her books, followed by an interview, then a Q&A session with you, the audience. Then there'll be further readings by Isabel, followed by readings by 3 poets, whose work will be published by Friends of Alice next year. I'm now going to hand you over to Isabel with the first reading.
Hello everyone, it's wonderful to see so many friends and colleagues and artists and musicians. It's just great. And thank you for braving this very cold evening. I want to thank the library, Kavita and Leah and Leila, who've been wonderful, allowing us to organise this event here in this wonderful setting. And I'm sorry we're a little bit late because we're running short of chairs. There aren't enough chairs, or there are too many people who can choose which one. And also I want to thank the people who helped me with the books, the editors for the Spanish books, Enrique Zatara, and also Sheila, and Lucia Rodriguez Paniagua, who revised an earlier edition of my novel, and the English editors, Mark Silberstein and Julia Sukan. I want to thank Julie as well for her wonderful covers. I took the pictures, but she made them into art. As you can see, the covers are really good. Lots of people I want to thank, but especially all of you, because you've been just great coming here and supporting this huge venture, really. Anyway, so you want me to start with a reading here. This is what we do. Let me see if I... So, this is a short story book. It's called Paradise and Hell, and it's got stories about paradise, stories about hell, and most of them have bits of paradise, even if they're about hell, and the other way around. There isn't one without the other, as you probably know from the lives you've led. Yeah. Lines, because I don't want to give it away, otherwise you won't buy the book. So I'm going to read just the first few lines. I'm going to read the first few lines. These are the first few lines of the short story called Hell. Hell has a little sort of subtitle or secondary title, which is a few personal notes and some snippets of propaganda. And it starts like this, and you immediately know what it's about. This is hell, I kept saying, but people insisted that I should not complain because hell was the best workplace in the world. Not everybody, they claimed, manages to get a job in hell. As careers go, it is a great one, with lots of allowances and all kinds of perks to literally die for. To die for, they repeated, which made me think that perhaps they were right. Most said that my constant complaining about hell was meant to make everyone feel sorry for me. The poor woman, they said, laughing, would feel so sorry for her. But truly, seriously, I was as sure as hell that I did not belong in that infernal setting, not one bit of me. I'm not meant for this. Of course you are. Most people are. I refuse to agree with any kind of commonly held view. Look, I've got to pretend at all times that I'm one of them, living a life I detest, embracing bizarre ideas, mixing with those that I would never talk to outside this place. But hell is one hell of a place, they all claimed. Yet, the more I despised hell, the more people insisted on talking about how wonderful the place was. The longer I worked there, the fewer options to my life, the greater my grievances, the less eagerness I had to get away from it all. It's such a privilege to work in hell. Don't you understand? They kept saying. Some argued that working in hell was not so much a profession as a vocation, and a major one for that matter. But it stinks of smoke, as if there's an untended fire somewhere. They laughed again. You should love it, even if it's hell. But didn't you say it's a great place to work for? I replied. And now you're implying that it's a terrible lot in life. Oh, don't get us wrong. As a workplace, it's amazing. But then hell is, well, hell. That's it.
If you've just joined us now, I want to start by very briefly introducing myself. I'm Mark Silberstein. I'm a freelance journalist working for the BBC World Service and the International Observatory for Human Rights. I'm very pleased to be here tonight with the founder of the Friends of Alice, Isabel del Rio, as we all know, to officially launch this new publishing venture and to give an insight into Isabel as a publisher and as a writer. So, Isabel, are you ready for the interview?
I most certainly am.
Right, just checking. Okay. Right, so the first question is if you would just like to tell us a bit about the name of Friends of Alice and how it came about and how this publishing venture actually started.
Thank you very much. This is what we used to do when I worked in the BBC. We had to do this, the double handle, so that there wouldn't be any. Did you see? Sorry, it's my ears in the BBC. Anyway, well, thank you very much, everyone. Again, Friends of Alice. Well, I have to go back several decades. My father started this company. It was a company for him. It's not a company for me, but it was a company for him. He started it as a children's publisher in the late 70s, and he published a number of books. He was also a great admirer of Lewis Carroll, and he translated Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass into Spanish. And he was successful in a way, but unfortunately, these things happen. He sadly died and wasn't able to continue with his venture. So that stayed in a sort of limbo for many years. And so a few years ago, when I realized that it's very difficult to publish when you are a bilingual writer, when you write sort of slightly experimental stuff, when you're a foreigner in a way, I said, if I'm going to have so much trouble publishing here or in Spain, which I have published, with several publishers, then let me just create my own thing. If you can't, obviously join me. And that's what I did. I restarted this venture. I call it a venture. I don't want to call it a company, and I don't want to call myself the director or anything. I'm the co-founder. The founder is my father. I'm the co-founder. And so I launched it in 2015 to coincide with the 150th anniversary of the publication of Alice in Wonderland, which was in 1865. You can see it here. Instagram handle is Alice, Friends of Alice 1865. And so I was going to launch a number of things. Unfortunately, as many of my friends know, I had a huge fall and I had damaged my shoulder and so on. I'm not going to go into the details, they're boring and they're very gory. So I'll just say that delayed the whole project. But anyway, so it's been launched and I started with myself. I'm sorry, I should have published other people, but I started publishing 4 books that I've been working on. One of them I've been working on for, God, Julia knows. Do you remember those weeks that you starved because I was just writing this book? Do you remember?
I remember.
Yes, I just starved. I wouldn't cook, I wouldn't clean, I wouldn't do anything. Just wrote. And so that
traumatic.
Was traumatic, just traumatized. That's 15, 17 years ago, and it's been with me all this time. It's been rejected many times, and I've rewritten it and so on. And so I published these 4 books. This one is a relaunch of a book I published 2 years ago, The Moon at the End of My Street, based on the wonderful advice by Karen Leo, who didn't like the cover, and he said something that has to do with the moon. So I had this wonderful picture of the moon that I took in Cheshire, Charles, in front of your niece's house, and I included photographs. The poetry books that we're planning to publish will include art, not only poetry but art, which go together just beautifully. And this one has some of my photographs. This is Paradise and Hell. You've already had a tasting of hell, metaphorically, of course. And this one is short stories in Spanish. And everyone says, what on earth is that picture? This picture was taken in a beach in southwest in Scotland, and it's the sand making this strange shapes, and it looks like death in a way, with a cape and so on. It's a bit of anamorphic, like the Holbein picture of the ambassadors. It's like if you look at it from a certain side, it becomes something else. Anyway, so I digress. So I launched it. It's not about me, of course. The plan is to publish other authors. I already have 3 authors lined up, 3 wonderful, amazing poets, where we'll be hearing from them a little bit later on. They will be reading their poems. So that's how it started. Did I answer your question?
Very much so. That's a compliment. Thank you. No, definitely. I mean, as you can see from the books themselves, they're not just beautifully written, but the actual covers and the artwork has an integral part of the actual feeling of the books, which I've edited and got to know very well myself, and some really, really wonderful writing. So thank you for that. The next question actually is related to 2 points that you brought up. One, writing in different languages, being bilingual. The other is multilingual. The other is just, I wanted to know if you could just tell me a bit about how you became a writer, the different mediums that you continue to work in, and I know that you have not only written novels and short stories, but you also write poetry.
Yes. Poetry is part of the whole thing. I think I started writing poetry and moved to short stories and did the natural progression. Doesn't mean that I abandoned poetry at all. It's nothing to be abandoned. I heard yesterday someone on the radio, I don't know who it was, but they spoke about the importance of poetry. People resort to poetry when there's a drama in their lives, when there's a funeral, when there's a birth, when there's a marriage. Poetry has traditionally been the language to celebrate or to mourn, and when we feel sad, we open a poetry book, or when we feel elated as well. So I think poetry is something that is, part of life more than anything else. And poetry is very linked to music as well. The lyrics are poetry, sheer poetry. Do you want me to read?
Yeah, if you happen to have a passage that comes to mind.
Yeah,
please share
this don't worry, I'm not going to read endless pages of my books, but I want to read a short poem from this book. It's a book on, it's factual. I called it factual and fictional poetry. Why did I call it that? Because fictional, because I tell some stories here. There's a love story. There's a story about colonizing the moon. It's a rather political story. But there's also factual poetry, and factual means that it's based on facts, on science, on discoveries, and you don't need to do very much when you just include the facts. They are poetry in themselves, especially the facts relating to the moon. So I'll read something which you will see it's just facts, but it's poetry, or perhaps you don't think it's poetry. You tell me at the end. 1 second. The symmetry of a total solar eclipse happens because by perfect chance the sun is 400 times larger than the moon, but also 400 times remoter from the Earth. And this simple coincidence makes these two bodies, sun and moon, stellar bodies so meaningful to us for our lives, rotate around them in more ways than one. Sun and moon appear as having exactly the same size on the sky, one covering the other flawlessly during such an eclipse. And so my advice is that if you are going to create a coincidence, make it as mind-blowing as this one.
Right, well, thank you. That was great. Thank you very much. I was just interested to know why, if you could tell me why you picked that particular poem to read and what it means to you. That poem.
Sorry. As I said, it's an example of the factual poetry. I don't think you have to add very much. I mean, what do you add to the sun or the moon or the stars or the sea? I mean, of course, people write about those things, but if you just describe what it is as if it was from a textbook on the moon, I did it on purpose, apropos, that it should sound like that, then that is, I think, that is enough. The book is about the moon because I love the moon. How many people love the moon here? Are influenced by the moon?
The sun, right?
I'm joking.
Not so much. So I think the moon is fantastic. There are many theories about the moon, that it was created, it's empty, it's hollow, it was created by aliens.
It's made of cheese,
It's made of cheese, yeah.
which is the one I strongly believe in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, nature in all its majesticness, all human majesticness and beautiful elements, and we have a lot to live up to as humans, and we have a lot to live up to as humans, to extraordinary nature, extraordinary nature, definitely show that we live on all the elements of nature, we live around the elements of nature. Right. Definitely. I was very interested, of course, because the fact that you are having lived both Spain and England, both English and Spanish. Have you found that there have been any obstacles in this writing process?
Trillions. Yes. Yes. The moment you are not inside the box, that is, I think, who said that I'm right, therefore you must be suspicious of me. I think it was Oscar Wilde. Yeah, it's very difficult when you don't fit, because publishers and agents, especially agents, want someone that they can say, she's the female Stephen King, she's the next whatever. So, and I am the female Stephen King, by the way. But it's true. But yeah, it's very difficult if you don't fit in. I mean, we know that if you don't fit in life, if you don't follow the norms. But when you're an artist or a writer, it's a problem. People want to be able to classify you very easily. And if you say, well, I'm a bit of an experimental writer, I'm a little bit of a bilingual writer, or a lot of a bilingual writer, and I do things my way, and I'm multi-genre, because that's the worst thing. When I meet people and they ask me, oh, so you're a writer, and what do you write? They want you to say, I'm a romantic novelist, and they go away so happy. Or I am a sci-fi writer. Sci-fi is difficult to digest, but if they want some very clear guidelines. And if you say I'm multi-genre, you see, I write fantasy, but I also write noir, but I also write crime, but I also write sci-fi, but I also write whatever. You know, I don't really know how to describe myself. And they see this woman dithering, and they move to the next person, of course, immediately. So, yeah, it's very difficult. What was the question? Sorry.
Where is that question now? I've crossed it off.
Bicultural. No, I agree. I don't believe in bilingualism. I believe in biculturalism. You have two cultures, multicultures, and we are blessed to be in this wonderful city. Despite Brexit, we're all here. This is a multicultural event, and we are all providing, you know, our input, which is artistic input. There are writers here, there are poets, there are artists, musicians, and we are all not only providing our bilingual input or multilingual, but also our biculturalism. So we are contributing to the language, because many of us write also in a language which is supposedly not our mother tongue, but we're also contributing with putting on paper the experiences that we've had. I mean, I attended the show of, I'm very happy to have someone from Invisible Presence here, Leo Voigt, and it's a project about launching bilingualism and Spanglish. Spanglish is a language in the States. It's not a language here yet. Wait till I write my memoir, which is in the pipeline. But you know, using language however you see fit, because for writers it is a must to experiment with language. You can experiment with language by breaking the grammatical rules, the morphological rules, and so on, but also by bringing into the equation the richness of your language, the experiences, the particular experiences that you've had back in your country. We've survived dictatorships, we've survived terrible events in our lives, and you know, this is what we're contributing to enrich the cultural heritage of this country. And some people don't like it or are not interested, and they would like to see us far away. But anyway, we won't touch the subject of Brexit, it's too boring.
Thank you so much for that explanation. I mean, it is definitely a grey world out there, and anybody wants to try to put it into a box of black and white is clearly missing the point of living in this world, so there's no doubt about it. And Isabel definitely gets the grey.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful compliment. I would just say that the next question is, I've read Paradise and Hell, which is of course a book of short stories in English. And if you're interested, of course, we will tell you more about how you can buy these wonderful books.
Not if you're squeamish, not if you don't read it.
Not if you're squeamish, but fair enough. These are written in English. And I was really enthralled. Could you tell me a bit about some of the inspirations and themes that made you create this collection of short stories, I might add, without giving too much away?
Right, well, inspiration, everything can inspire you, anything can inspire you. It's just the treatment, everything is in the treatment of the story, and the point of view and the voice. Without a voice, there's no short story, there's no novel. At a very, very early age, I remember my grandfather, who's not a believer, he always said, the person who I greatly admired, he was a scientist and he built pianos and he did all sorts of things. In the end he worked for the railway and was punished for it, but I won't go into that. That's actually the subject of a book that I'm planning. So he always used to say, there is no such thing as heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are on this earth. And I always thought it was the silliest and craziest thing I'd ever heard. I mean, if I was 10 or 8 or whatever it was. But that's the sort of thing that stays with you. It's the little bit of stone that stays with you, and you churn it and you turn it and you think about it for years and years and years, and then eventually you think of a book once you're a writer. And so this is the result, that it's paradise and hell, and this is something I said before, some stories about hell have bits of paradise, and some stories about paradise have bits of hell. I mean, you can't go through life just living in tragedy mode, you know, and you can't go through life living just in comedy mode. I wish we could. So, you know, one without the other is pointless. And so this is what this book is about. Yeah, it's a homage. It's a lot of homages to my father, to my grandfather, and so on. It's a way of keeping the past alive, as they're not here anymore. Yeah.
Great, thank you. It was a wonderful answer.